William Booth, his prophetic anointing. For all my Christian life since 1986, I have worked with marginalised people, homeless, addicts, people with mental health issues. For 8 years, I worked for the Salvation Army in their social services centres. I was always struck by the commitment of the Salvation Army officers that I met. I like to hear them tell their stories, as some of them had grown up in the Salvation Army. It's a movement of humble people filled with a desire to serve God. I remember one of the officers telling me that as a child she grew up in a Salvationist family, and every year there was a thing called Brown Envelope Day. Every officer would receive his or her marching orders in a brown envelope, which would tell them where they had to work. If that meant moving from the south of England to Scotland, then the officer would move, even if he had to uproot the whole family. So that's commitment. Anyway, I was browsing through a second-hand bookshop in Bristol one time, and I came across a book called In Darkest England and the Way Out by William Booth. Booth wrote this book in 1890 when Britain referred to parts of Africa as Darkest Africa. His point was that there was a lot of darkness in England, terrible poverty, terrible social injustice, exploitation, and abuse of people. He was aware of the huge number of orphans, of homelessness, and of deprivation. Things were so bad that people would sell their own children to escape from poverty. The book attempted to quantitatively assess the scale of the problem, provide statistics, and look for solutions. In this sense, it was quite a modern book. In fact, in its day, it was revolutionary in its approach and caused a sensation when it was published, selling 10,000 copies on its first day. In the back of the book was a pull-out picture which illustrated Booth's vision for the lost. This is the aspect of William Booth I want to highlight. A prophet who had visions. William Booth is of course mainly remembered as the founder of the Salvation Army. He was originally a Methodist minister and evangelist. His heart was always for evangelizing the lost, and so he eventually became an independent evangelist, so that he could concentrate full-time on preaching to the lost. By 1865, Booth and his wife had opened a Christian Revival Society in the East End of London, which held regular evening meetings to share the gospel of Christian salvation to the poor and marginalised. The Christian Revival Society was renamed the Christian Mission, subsequently to become the East London Christian Mission. In 1878, Booth was dictating a letter where he said, "We are a volunteer army." His son Bramwell was listening and interjected and said, "Volunteer? I'm no volunteer, I'm a regular." From this came the idea of a Salvation Army. However, the purpose of this video is not to give the history of the Salvation Army, but to tell of William Booth as a prophet and visionary who had many visions from the Lord. William Booth had visions of heaven, visions of the future of the nations, visions of the future of the church. He actually produced a book called Visions in 1906. Probably his most famous vision of all was his vision for the lost. He was sitting in a railway carriage looking out of the window in 1865, I think, when his mind started to wander and he thought of all the huge morass of unsaved people in the world. He later wrote, "As I looked out of the window, I seemed to see them all, millions of people all around me, given up to their drink and their pleasure, their dancing and their music, their business and their anxieties, their politics and their troubles, ignorant, willfully ignorant in many cases, and in other instances knowing all about the truth and not caring at all. But all of them, the whole mass of them, sweeping on and on, and up in their blasphemies and devilries to the throne of God. While my mind was thus engaged, I had a vision. So I've attached a link to the full vision in the description. It was a vision of a dark, stormy sea full of the lost who were perishing. Out of this sea rose a rock which represented Jesus Christ. Some of the lost were struggling to get onto the rock, and there were some on the rock helping them out of the sea. However, most of the people on the rock who had themselves been rescued were simply moving on with their lives and ignoring those still in the sea. Booth was shocked by the vision and at how many believers ignored the call to rescue the lost. The great thing about William Booth was not just that he had visions, but that he acted on them. At the end of his vision for the lost, he says, "Now then, go to God and tell him you are prepared, as much as necessary, to turn your back upon it all, and that you are willing to spend the rest of your days struggling in the midst of these perishing multitudes, whatever it may cost you." Another example of William Booth's determination to make a difference was when his son Bramwell saw homeless people sleeping under London bridges. He told his father about it, and his father replied, "Go and do something." This event is seen as a pivotal moment in the development of the Salvation Army, which is now the biggest provider of social services in the world. For me, this is the mark of a true prophet. He not only saw visions, but he had God's heart to act upon them. In other words, he was obedient. If you are interested in William Booth's visions, I'll leave a reference for a book about them. If I listed them all, the video would be too long. But thank you for listening. If you found this video interesting, you can find more information at prophecy-workshop.com.